As the bad moon appears in the sky, vast skulk mobs of moonclan grots pour up to the surface. Whooping and cackling, they fling themselves at the foe in a great mass that overwhelms even the most heroic and determined defence. One by one, the enemy fall beneath the weight of the maniacal onslaught, and though in the end they may lie amidst mounds of slain grots, they are no less dead for it, and the greenskins no less victorious. Hello Gits, young and old, and welcome to the Warhammer channel. My name is Ian, and in this video I'm going to walk you through some of the colours and techniques I use to paint the grots of my Gloomspite Gitz army, the Frostloons. I'll be covering how I paint the skin and details of the grots themselves, as well as the black and blue robes, metals and a few other details. Picking a member of the incredible Gringcrack's Loon Court to demonstrate on was like a parent trying to pick a favourite child. Obviously they have one, but they just can't tell you. But I'm sure it's probably you. I elected to go with Snorbo de Spore because he has most of the required areas on show, whereas others are either armoured up or literally stood behind a door. But don't worry Skullco and Pronk fans, they may just pop up later in the video. So here we go. With Snorbo primed in grey, I'm going to start on the green skin. I'll be applying a base coat of Elysian green, as I really love the yellowy green tone it has. It's a layer paint, so if you're going to use a dark undercoat like black, I'd recommend laying down a darker mid-green base coat beforehand. With a solid layer of Elysian green down, I'll next begin highlighting the raised edges, such as the ears, fingers, nose and eyebrows, with a 1-to-1 mix of Elysian green and Nurgling green. I'm going to glaze a 1-to-1 mix of Carroburg Crimson and the previous Elysian Nurgling mix. Focus on the areas which would get wear and tear and scuffed, like the nose, knuckles, elbows and knees. You know, from kneeling down and picking up mushrooms. You don't need to dilute this, as the Carroburg does that for you. I'll next repeat this process using a 2-part Carroburg to 1-part green mix. Focus this on the extremities, so with the nose, you know, just the tip, and with the knuckles, the top edges. Next up, it's time for my obligatory Druchii Violet Recess Wash. This really just helps reinforce the detail and adds a lot of depth to that green. And our final step on the main green of the skin is just to add an extreme highlight of Nurgling green. So now onto the eyes, and I'm going to base coat these in Mephiston Red. I'm now going to paint in some shadow to the top of the eyeball using a mix of Mephiston Red and Abaddon Black. This just simulates where the hood and the eyebrows would block out some of the light. Now do your best squinty face, poke out your tongue, and we're just going to add a small light dot at the top of each eye. The great thing with grots is it doesn't really matter which direction they're looking, it will look fine. And now you can breathe out. We're going to now give a blue tone to under the bottom lid of the eyes by applying a mix of Elysian green and Outdorf blue. Then I'll highlight this by mixing in a little bit of Teclis blue. and then we'll just redefine this area with a really gentle recess wash of Drucky Violet. We're next going to move on to those lovely nose picking nails, and if Snorbo had any teeth we'd use the same technique here too. We're going to start with a base coat of Xandri dust. We're next going to highlight these with Ushabti bone. And once we've done this, we'll do the same again with pallid witch flesh. We'll then just apply a little amount of Agrax Earthshade to the base of the nails. Not only does this make them feel a bit grimy, it also just separates them a bit more from the skin. If your grot model is completely naked, congratulations, you're now done. Fortunately for those of us with a weaker constitution, Snorbo is an extremely modest dresser. The robes and hood of the moonclan grots are iconic, and I like to use the fact that there's a clear separation of hood and robe to add in a bit of colour, and in my case, blue. But you may wish to do both parts in one colour if that suits your Git scheme better. Ironically, the basis of my blue is Sotek green, but yeah, it's basically a turquoisey blue. I'll apply this to the hood of Snorbo, but I also like to mix in a few grots which have the colours reversed so they have it as their main tunic colour instead. I'll next give this a wash of diluted Agrax Earthshade just to bring out the details. And now I'll relayer that Sotek green, which is definitely blue, over the hood area, avoiding any of the recesses we've just shaded. And now to highlight those edges and creases of the hood in Temple Guard blue. Followed by an extreme highlight of Baharoth blue. And then I'm just going to glaze a bit of Agrax Earthshade on to give the impression of shadow, so focusing under some of those creases and also on the lower parts of the hood. Now onto the black portion of Snorbo's garbs. I'm going to use a Baden black and base coat the tunic area. I'll then highlight this with dark Reaper, followed by an extreme edge highlight of Rust Grey. We're now going to turn our attention to some hood ornamentation, and no, I don't mean the Rolls Royce, which definitely isn't in my driveway. By just adding some simple patterning, you can really enhance the look. For grots, I really like to use a mixture of checkerboard, flames and dags. So on Snorbo I'm just going to go for some dags, and I'm going to paint this in the same way as I've just done the black. And here's the reason the video's taken me so long to make, it's because I've been painting the rest of the Looncourt as I've been doing it. So here's Pointy Burke, sporting some nice orange checks. The boss man himself with some nice orange dags. Pokin Snark with some fetching black flames. Oops, sorry Moonface Nags, nothing for you. And everyone's favourite Skulko and Pronk, ready to have all this extra effort plonked behind a big shield. Back to Snorbo, and I'm going to base coat the wood and some of the leather in Dryad bark, before applying a shade of Agrax Earthshade. I'll then highlight these areas firstly with Gawthor brown and then Baneblade brown. Now with the fetching rope belt, I'm going to paint this in much the same way as the nails and teeth. I'm going to start with a base coat of Xandri dust, which I'll then wash with Agrax Earthshade. Then I'll highlight this with Ushabti Bone, and finally Pallid Witch Flesh. Then I'll just tie it all back together with a diluted wash of Agrax Earthshade. And for any bits of stitching, I'll just base coat these in Rakarth Flesh, highlight them with Pallid Witch Flesh, and apply that diluted Agrax Earthshade wash to reinforce the detail. Now we're going to move on to one of my favourite parts, and that's painting the metals. We're going to apply a coat of lead belcher to all the areas we want to be a kind of silver irony effect. Once we've done this, we're going to apply a wash of, you guessed it, Agrax Earthshade. With this dry, we're going to highlight it with Stormhost Silver. Then we're going to go back to Agrax Earthshade and use this to darken some areas of the metal. With that done, we're now going to apply a rust effect, and we're going to use one of my favourite paints, which is Scrag Brown. We're going to water this down and apply this in crevices and in any areas where moisture would gather or sit. You can play around with how much you dilute it, and that will change how strong the rust effect is. It will look quite bright when you put it on, but as that paint dries it will dull down. And finally we're going to finish with some gold. We'll apply a base coat of Retributor armour, which will then wash with Agrax Earthshade, highlight with Liberator Gold, and then Stormhost Silver. And finally we'll just apply a slight verdigris effect using Nihilakh Oxide. With that done, between this video and part 1, where I look at squigs, you now have most of the basics that I used to paint the moonclan portion of my Gitz. I've gone ahead and finished up the rest of the Loon Court, and they're ready to join Grib, who I painted in the last video. If there are any areas of the models that I haven't gone over in this video that you'd like to know more about, please do comment and I'll happily share recipes. But for the sake of keeping this video to a sensible length, I thought it was probably wise to keep to the core areas. I'm really pleased with how they've come out, and they've got me really excited for the upcoming Battle Tome. If you'd like to win a Loon Court of your own, please like and subscribe and comment on here and or in the part 1 video telling me the name of the Loon King. A winner will be picked at random and announced at the start of my next video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.